recording. Fantastic, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Beck, and I am the Behavioral Health Program Manager here at the CJC. You are likely tuned in, and hopefully tuned in, for a webinar on the Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Grant Program, the standard application that opened up just last week. Today's webinar will be really focused on the deflection application itself, and this webinar will be recorded and available on the CJC's YouTube channel at a later date. Should you want to share it within your networks or know someone who was not able to attend today, and please feel free to share that link. Before we hop in, just a reminder, it's a virtual webinar, so please be sure to mute yourselves if you're not speaking, and I will have some time for Q&A at the end here. But quite a few slides to get through, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to provide a quick overview of Behavioral Health Deflection Program, which we're calling the BHD program. So deflection program defined in House Bill 4002 as a collaborative program between law enforcement agencies and behavioral health entities that assists individuals who may have substance use disorder, another behavioral health disorder, or co-occurring disorders to create community-based pathways to treatment, recovery support services, housing, case management, or other services. The CJC is the administering agency of this grant, and our responsibilities include data collection and analysis, and then actually getting the grant program itself underway. In terms of a program overview, the BHD program was established by 4002 to award grants to fund deflection programs. There was a little over $20.7 million appropriated by House Bill 5204 for use in the 23-25 biennium, excuse me. The BHD program, administered by the CJC under the oversight of the existing Impacts Grant Review Committee. That is a group of individuals who monitor and evaluate progress and make award decisions for the existing Impacts Grant, as well as this new BHD grant. Eligible applicants include Oregon's 36 counties and 9 federally recognized tribal governments. An applicant may also be multi-jurisdictional on behalf of a consortium of government partners. Hold on. In terms of available funding, of the $20.7 million and change, there was about $18,487,381 that was made available to Oregon's 36 counties. And then 10% of that total funding, $2,070,819, was set aside for the 9 federally recognized tribal governments. These decisions were made by the Impacts Grant Review Committee back on April 2nd. They were, required by House Bill 4002 to make decisions as to what would be set aside for evaluation, what would be set aside for tribes. This is what they settled on. And then also at that April 2nd meeting, the GRC approved this formula funding table for counties. So prior to the passage of House Bill 4002 and 5204, legislative staff reached out to counties to assess their willingness and interest in participating in implementing a deflection program for their community. And ultimately, 23 counties, identified here by stars, indicated a willingness to participate. Those counties were considered early adopters. And back in April, there was an early adopter application process through which the 23 counties had the opportunity to access 50% of the total formula funding identified here on this table by submitting a short form application and getting that money out the door by this Friday, actually. So 60 days from the date that the bill was signed. You'll notice that 20 of the stars here are yellow. That just means that They ended up opting in for that 50% funding. The 3 identified with the red stars were identified as an early adopter, but did not end up going through that short form application process. We will be going into the difference of early adopters versus the standard application in a little bit, but just wanted to bring this table and highlight it for you all. In terms of program eligibility, it must be coordinated by or in consultation with your CMHP or a local mental health authority. It also has some pretty strict requirements for folks that must be involved, your local partners, a district attorney, a law enforcement agency, your community mental health program, and a provider from a burn. All programs also require a program coordinator, and that individual is responsible for convening deflection program partners as needed for the operation of the program, managing and tracking the awarded grant funds, and then tracking and reporting data as required by the CJC using our handy dandy grant management portal. And that happens on a quarterly basis. Awarded BHD grant funds may be used for expenses including, but of course not limited to, the actual operation of your deflection program, law enforcement employees, deputy district attorneys, behavioral health treatment workers such as peer navigators, mobile crisis teams, support service workers, behavioral health workforce development, and even capital construction of behavioral health treatment infrastructure. Planning grants are also an allowable use and may be awarded for the development of deflection programs. Planning grants are helpful if you're getting partners together to discuss what deflection looks like in your community, identifying the needs of the folks living within your jurisdiction. So a quick clarification of early adopters versus standard BHD program. Back to thinking of that formula funding table that had the counties that were identified with the little stars. Those folks have already gone through an early adopter process. Many of you may actually be on this call. So you completed a short form application. Your project period started April 1st of this year and goes through June 30th of next year, 2025. That first 50% chunk of funding you should be receiving hopefully by Friday. I believe all but one program were on track to be receiving their funding by that time. The one that unfortunately was a little behind just had a internal county approval process that they needed to go through. Early adopters remain eligible to receive the remaining 50% of their formula funding as part of the standard process, which is probably why you're tuned in here today if you were an early adopter and already went through an early adopter application. The standard application is, or rather the standard track, is open to all 36 counties as well as Oregon's tribes. This specific application that we're going over today is open to Oregon's counties. There are planning grants, there are operational grants. It's a very standard CJC request for grant proposals process. It's detailed. There's multiple steps. We'll go through all of those shortly. And for folks who were not early adopters and are going through the standard track, your project period begins July 1st through June 30th of 2025. And all for all folks, this next disbursement, be it your remaining 50% or your very first disbursement of funding, is set, with all the plans we have in place to get to you by the end of September. So by the beginning of October 2024. You are eligible, of course, to apply funding to applicable costs incurred, at the beginning of your project period, be that April 1st if you were an early adopter, or July 1st if this is, the track that you are starting with. And then just to give you a quick visual before our application walkthrough of where we're at. So we're nearing the end of May. We're in that last gold bar of, getting money out in the top yellow area. And that is for the early adopters. And then this RFGP application, as part of the standard process, opened last week and will be due to the CJC on July 1st. And then we have, gotten a pull out to our grant review committee members, who are the decision-making body to make those review and award decisions for sometime in July. And then we will have the standard protest period that, is part of our request for grant proposals process. And then once that protest period ends, just probably like the August 23rd-ish, that's when we'll begin contracting, and contracts will be sent out to grantees. We aim to have those in your hands, for a total of 4 weeks for you all to complete your processes as needed. A noteworthy event in time is that September 1st, that law changes, recriminalizing PCS and DCS charges. And, our goal is to get money out to you as soon as possible when we get your signed contract back, no later than September 30th, 2024. And as a reminder, you're eligible to backdate expenses to the beginning of your project period. If you were an early adopter, that's the beginning of April. If you were applying for the first time here as part of the standard process, that's July 1st. Okay, I now have prepared an application walkthrough. This is intended to be, kind of a quick, but also a very in-depth application walkthrough, as if you were seeing all of this for the first time. So apologies if this is not the first time that you're seeing it, but I hope that this is helpful. And then we will have time for questions at the end. So there are a couple ways to get to the application on the CJC website, which I have the URL up here, but you are able to go to the grants dropdown at the top of the page, select the Behavioral Health Deflection Program. That will get you to this landing page. Has a couple of helpful links, House Bill 4002, our calendar, my contact information should you have questions about the grant, the funding table of all of the total amounts that were approved as part of that funding formula that the Grant Review Committee reviewed back in April, and then the actual solicitation itself. The solicitation will basically auto-populate a PDF into your browser, and you're welcome to download it. It's helpful to review. It contains 4 kind of components here. The first is the solicitation itself. It's a little 2-page document that gives you the application due date of July 1st, 2024 at 1:00 p.m. Tells you the purpose, eligibility requirements, goes into detail, about the actual request for grant proposals. Then we've included, as kind of appendices within that PDF, the application questions in full. This could be really helpful if you are completing this as part of a consortia, or if there are multiple partners working on this application, or folks within your departments. If it's a collaborative effort, sharing that PDF could be really helpful in terms of your planning processes, so that not everyone has to be in the application at the same time. All application questions are included there. There is the sample budget sheet, and we'll get into little details within the application of how to go about downloading that document, but it's there for viewing as part of this request for grant proposals package, and then also a sample grant agreement. Actually accessing the application would be through our grant management portal, SM Apply. The URL is right here. It was also shared widely by us last week. And if you are familiar with CJC grants, it should be in a very familiar place for you. But this is what the landing page looks like when you get to the actual grant program itself. You'll see the apply button here and a login button at the top right. If you already have an existing, login credentials with SM Apply and CJC, grant management, feel free to use those here. If you'll be prompted to go to the login page, enter your email and password, and log in that way. If you are brand new to CJC grants, or you do not have login credentials quite yet, you will need to register. That will prompt you to enter your first name, last name, email, create a password, make sure you select the CAPTCHA to identify you're not a robot, and then create an account. That will bring you to this landing page, and likely at the top, you'll receive a banner like this one that says your email address has not been verified. Send that verification link. You'll access your email, go through the process of verifying, and then that annoying banner will disappear. But otherwise, once logged in, this is the landing page that you'll see. I wanted to point out the instructions button here on the right. That opens up a pop-up window, with specific instructions, but helpfully, again, that request for grant proposal is linked there. That's the second link, and the House bill, the first link. And then also wanted to point out your ability to add a collaborator. So that button allows you to add folks to the application itself in SM Apply. There's a pop-up window as displayed here, where you can enter in the email addresses of those collaborators to send them an invite to collaborate on this particular application. You can select their type of access, whether that be to view and edit or to view only. And then I always find it helpful to include some sort of short message to those individuals, because the email is going to come from the system. It can look very suspiciously like a phishing attack. So maybe something to the effect of, hey, this is the application, from me, and something to the effect of just giving them an idea that it's expected. Maybe also give them a heads up that it's coming. Once you have your collaborators involved, and you'll be able to allow them access as needed to complete, but you'll begin checking off these tasks. You'll see that there's 4 total here: a cover sheet, eligibility questions, data acknowledgements, and a budget projection sheet, all of which are due to the CJC by July 1st, 1:00 p.m. We'll click the cover sheet first here. You will be asked to identify your county from a drop-down list. And then you'll be asked, is this part, are you applying as part of a consortium of counties? And you'll be prompted to select if it's for an individual county or a consortium. And then you'll be prompted to input the primary applicant contact. This is the individual that we will contact regarding the application. That fiscal contact goes here. Note that the legal name of the organization receiving payment, that state employer identification number, accurate address, those are all really critical. And apologies in advance, my dog is named Kava, and so she is going to be the example used throughout this application, so that's what that all is. And then, would you like the automated clearinghouse ACH direct deposit? And I wanted to point out there are 2 options here at the bottom. You may save and continue editing with the button here on the left. If you are to do that, you will see this, on the menu on the left, the cover sheet is now kind of like a glass half full. It's in progress, and you are welcome to completely log out, exit, come back to this application another time, Maybe one of your collaborators is going to review it and then they mark it as complete. Regardless, when you do decide to mark it as complete, you'll notice that that glass half full becomes a check mark on that left menu. And as you're making your way through the application, you're saving, you're exiting, logging back into edit, you'll notice that the tasks become complete. And then that blue status bar on the bottom of the panel also shows your progress overall. If you mark something as complete and wish to go back and edit it, you can absolutely do so by clicking these 3 dots on the top right of the actual, task itself. And that 3 dots allows you to download what you have entered, and it, has a PDF kind of summary of what you're seeing. You can completely reset it, start anew, or you can reopen it, edit. And if you do decide to reopen it, you will be prompted to also mark it as complete again to have that task finished. So next up would be the eligibility questions. Wanted to point out that as part of a consortium, did your county establish another county as a designee? This is where you will select yes or no. If you select yes, that you are applying as part of a consortium, but you are not the designee that's, filling out the application for the consortium, your applicant eligibility questions will end here. You'll click next, the task will be marked as complete, and you will move on to the next task. For everyone else, so if you are not applying as a consortium, you're applying independently, or if you are the designee of your consortium, completing the application on behalf of everyone, you'll select no, and further eligibility questions await you on the next page. We're going to go through those one by one to just give you a clear picture of what we are asking and what we are looking for. First and importantly, identifying your program coordinator. We need their name, the position title, the organization that they work for, and then we are also interested in how that program coordinator will be funded. If they are an eligible expense of these particular grant funds. So if you're planning to use the BHD grant funds, just state so. Perhaps, your CMHP has other funding, they're taking care of it, and these coordinator responsibilities are just being added to that person's plate. Please state so. This will be helpful in our advocacy for, funding in the future. So we appreciate you taking the time to answer. And then there's just a quick acknowledgement here at the bottom, asking all applicants to acknowledge that the program coordinator is responsible for those specific duties that we talked about earlier in this webinar. Next up, you will have the required program partners and collaboration. We went through the program eligibility requirements, who all was involved. This is where you identify those organizations. So for the first one, is your deflection program coordinated by or in consultation with a CMHP, a local mental health authority, or a federally recognized tribal government? You must select one to be eligible, and this application will not let you leave this blank. When you select one, please identify the name of that organization. For B2, the second question here, we also ask that you identify the names of the organizations for the local partners involved, those required partners. You've got the district attorney, the law enforcement agency, the CMHP, and the BURN. I wanted to note that as part of the required local partners, depending on your jurisdiction, your CMHP and your BURN may be the same organization, and that is okay. Please just identify them twice, like I did here. Next, you have an optional question to identify any other organizations involved in the development and or the administration of your county's deflection program. So these are not required, but if you have these folks on board, we are curious to know. So please do, select all that apply and then identify them by name. Next, prior to submitting this application, have you coordinated with all these program partners identified above? And specifically the required program partners. So that district attorney, law enforcement agency, CMHP, and Burn. Have you talked to those folks? If you select, excuse me, no, that's the next question, so pardon me. So the answer should be yes. We want you to have coordinated with those folks. Then the next question is to please describe the coordination with those program partners. We have word limits on all of these narrative questions. And the reason that those exist, I know that they can be frustrating, is because that impacts grant review committee, including CJC staff. We're going to read every single one of these applications. And, with 36 counties potentially completing these applications, what we are looking for is the clearest and most concise explanation. So really think about quality over quantity of words. Think about if you were reviewing these applications and what, when you were looking to glean from these answers, we just want the actual meat and potatoes of what you are doing, what you are planning, for each of these narrative responses. I tried to give a few examples of, what specifically we're looking for, and we'll go through those. So for instance, this first one, for the coordination with program partners that has occurred, to set up your jurisdiction's deflection program, your clear, concise explanation should include things like, okay, who's involved? Is there anyone missing from the table? What steps have you taken in your jurisdiction to make sure that partners and collaborators have a say in the development and operation of your program? Do you guys meet regularly? Is there any other information that a decision maker, someone who's reviewing for eligibility to make sure that you have the right folks on board, what do those folks need to know? So 150 words, I know it's not a lot, but really we're looking for just a clear, concise summary of what you are doing. So same thing for B6 here. Describe how the program coordinator will communicate with all program partners concerning program participants, any other matter not necessary for the administration of the program. A clear, concise explanation would include, hey, what action is your program coordinator taking to keep people involved and informed? Specifically, our coordinator sends an email list of program participants every Friday to these partners, or, something clear and simple and concise to that effect. Next up, the actual details of your deflection program. So for C1, you will be asked to identify whether you are requesting funds for a planning grant or an operational grant. If you choose planning, and you may have already selected planning as part of your early adopter process, know that this grant will primarily be used to plan and to develop and to get those partners around a table to talk about what this looks like for your community, to have those conversations, to explore different ideas. And, all of that is welcome. And that deflection program will likely be implemented after January 2025. You will be required to notify us at the CJC as soon as your program is ready to turn operational. There's basically a switch that we need to flip. So please keep us informed when, should your planning grant be ready to turn operational. But hey, if you are ready to be operational now, or maybe your program in your jurisdiction has already been operational for some time, you'll select the second option here and acknowledge that this grant will primarily be used to operate a deflection program that will be implemented or has already been implemented before January 2025. And then at this time, we ask you to estimate the approximate date of when you think your program may begin operating. We know that this can change, so please just know that it's like for estimating purposes right now. And if you already have an operational program, please give the month and year for which that program became operational, even if it's all the way back to 2018, for instance. For this next bit, if your program is operational, we ask that you provide detailed responses to the questions below. If you selected a planning grant, we understand that a lot of these are still going to be in discussion and in progress and might just be concepts right now. That is okay. But we do ask that you please describe what you have done to date or you're currently planning to do in response to each question below. So regardless of planning or operational, you're going to be answering these questions, but just do so to the best of your ability, depending on, whether you are operational or actually just planning. So the first one, C3 here, from the initial call for service or point of contact with an individual, be that law enforcement, first responder, some community response effort, to the point of a referral and or engagement with treatment or services. So from point A to point B, please describe how your deflection program functions in steps. So in parentheses here, we have a couple ideas that your response could include things like referral pathways, your plan for engagement and treatment and or services for your participants, the collaboration among deflection partners, data sharing practices, etc. These are all ideas as to what could be included in this response. The word limit is 300 words. Again, we are looking for a clear, concise explanation. We're looking for quality over quantity. But again, think of the folks, including me, who are going to be reading these. What we are looking for is just a clear way to understand what you are doing or what you're planning to do, how it might work in practice. And doing so in steps is super helpful. First, the law enforcement officer, makes contact with an individual. They decide if they are eligible. They are offered X, Y, and Z. They are connected to a case manager. The program coordinator is notified. This next stuff happens. That's the kind of detail that we're looking for. It does not have to be a robust explanation, but again, that clear, simple, the actionable steps that you're taking are super helpful. In C4, we ask that you describe the individuals who are eligible for your deflection program. So be very specific. The folks that we plan will be eligible for this program includes those individuals, suspected of having a user amount of possession of controlled substances or delivery of controlled substances, or maybe it's someone with those and in crisis. Maybe there is a community referral process you are going through. Just who specifically in your community is going to be eligible for your program. Next up, what qualifies as a successful outcome for participants in your deflection program? So a successful deflection outcome occurs when, this individual is connected to a case manager and they identify a treatment plan or services to be engaged in. Or maybe it's law enforcement officer, case manager, have this individual and they, engage in that first service or treatment. Or maybe it's something even further down the line. That's where we want you to be, super specific. What does success look like for your deflection program in C5 here? And C6, how will your deflection program be culturally and linguistically responsive, trauma-informed, and evidence-based? This is coming right out of a requirement from House Bill 4002. And so the legislators, their intent is to have these deflection programs be culturally, linguistically responsive, trauma-informed, evidence-based, really addressing language access barriers. That's the goal. Again, if you have a planning grant, or even if you're operational and these things maybe aren't ironed out just yet, that's okay. What action have you taken, or what are you planning to do to address these factors? Give us your detailed, simple, clear, concise, and specific plan. Same thing for C7 for the addressing language access barriers. What language barriers exist in your community or your programming currently? What action have you taken, or what are you planning to do to address those? In C8 here, as part of your deflection program, will law enforcement or first responders, as part of their routine activities or patrol, make the first contact and refer individuals to treatment or a case manager? If you select yes, you will be prompted to explain the specific process. So again, like a law enforcement officer is out on patrol. They identify an individual, who is suspected of possession of a controlled substance in a user amount, and they make contact in this way. And these are the steps the officer takes to determine if they're eligible, something to that effect. Short and sweet. And then same thing with C9. If you select yes, you'll be prompted to explain the specific process. So as part of your deflection program, will arrests or citations be made? Will charges be filed? Or will charges be held in abeyance? And we recognize if you're in a planning stage, this can change. That is okay. Select what you have for now, give us a description of that process, and we can circle back to it at a later date. Just keep us informed of how these things change. C10 here, as part of your deflection program, can an individual voluntarily initiate contact with a first responder agency? Can they walk up to a fire station or a police department or some sort of emergency medical service? Can they seek referral for treatment there without fear of arrest, citation, or charges being filed? If that answer is a yes, please describe that process. What would that look like? C11, as part of your deflection program, will a first responders or an outreach team proactively identify folks or seek out folks within your community that have substance use disorders and refer them to engage in treatment and or services without arrest, citation, or charges filed? Again, if yes, please describe that process. And then the last bit here for these eligibility questions and learning about your program description overall. C12, as part of your deflection program, will first responders and or program partners conduct specific outreach to individuals who have recently experienced an opioid overdose to engage them in treatment and or services without an arrest, citation, or charges filed? If yes, describe that process. C13, as part of your deflection program, will a multidisciplinary mobile crisis team, so folks like behavioral health professionals, crisis workers, peer specialists, would they be responding to a call for service and refer individuals to treatment or a case manager without an arrest, citation, or charges filed? If yes, please explain. That will be the end of these specific set of questions. You can mark that as complete, or save and have that kind of glass half full status on that left panel there. And again, if you do mark it as complete and you need to go back in and edit, it's those 3 dots with that second arrow on the right where you do so. The next task is data acknowledgements. So here you are acknowledging that there is going to be data collected and required as part of receiving these grant funds. Again, this is kind of like the consortium question specifically to make sure those folks who are not the designee for their consortium aren't having to complete a whole nother application. So as part of a consortium, did your county establish another county as designee for this application purpose? If you select yes, that you're applying as part of a consortium, but you are not the designee for doing so, your data acknowledgement will end here. This task will be marked as complete. If you select no, meaning that you're applying independently, or you are the designee for your consortium, further data acknowledgements await. They look like this. You're basically acknowledging that you're going to comply with our data tracking and reporting requirements, that your program will cooperate with not only the CJC, but also our technical assistance providers, the folks at Oregon Health and Science University, for establishing a statewide data collection system for deflection programs. And you also attest that the program coordinator for your deflection program or some sort of representative for your program will attend all the required webinars that are held by CJC's research partners or technical assistance partners during the first year of your PhD program. So someone from your program has to show up to these things. Those are the 3 acknowledgements there. The second part of this, we ask you, to consider the required and optional partners that are included in your program's development or administration operation. Are you anticipating any barriers or challenges in tracking and reporting the following data points? Just select all that apply. The options are listed here. You'll see it in the application. This will just help our technical assistance partners at OHSU flag these so that they can follow up and make sure that you are getting the support that you need should one of those barriers be identified. Right, and then your data acknowledgement section will be complete, and you'll be moving on to the 4th and final task, which is the budget projection sheet. So again, down here, the second arrow on the right, if you select yes, that you are applying as part of a consortium, note that only the consortium designee will need to complete a budget projection sheet. So if that's not you, your application will basically end here. You'll be marked as complete, and then you will be prompted to submit. Please note, all folks that are part of a consortium need to complete an application. It's just that the specific designee is the one that's going to be required to complete the whole dang thing. The other folks just have these acknowledgements and helps the CJC understand their involvement. So for folks who are not the designee and you're part of the consortium, you are required to complete this application, even if you already did so through the early adopter application. This is a brand new route. So we ask that all folks who are getting part of a deflection program complete this process. If you're applying independently or you're the designee for your consortium, you'll click no here, and there'll be a next button that will prompt you here to download the budget projection sheet by clicking this link. You can also view that funding table if that's helpful for your projection purposes before you then upload. So by clicking the download link here, it should be an in-browser download. You'll see it up in the right-hand side of your browser. It will look like that. It says Budget Projection Sheet BHD. If for some reason, it's a quick process. So if for some reason you miss it and you're unable to find it, know that you can also locate it within your file explorer under downloads. Again, right here, budget projection sheet BHD, that's the one you select. When you get access to it, you'll see it's a standard CJC budget projection sheet. Make sure that you save as. You're saving a copy to your computer. It's really handy if you include the county name as part of your title. That helps keep all these organized on our end. But save it on your computer so that you can upload it to your application. Zooming in here a little bit, you'll notice the very first blank for you to complete is the county name or name. So please do not forget to include this on the budget projection sheet when you complete it. Please include all county names. So if you're the designee for your consortium and you're completing this budget sheet, list yourself first and then the other folks as needed. And then you'll be going through and identifying your budget for your specific project period and, personnel, contractual services, equipment, supplies, etc. Very standard CJC process. If you have any questions, you can reach out to our grant liaison, Avery, or myself. But save your progress. And then once you're ready, you'll click upload file here. The accepted formats are going to be those Excel documents. And once there is a file uploaded, you'll see it, populate here. And then you're ready to either save and continue editing or mark as complete. Once you do mark as complete, you, again, will see it here. And I did mine for Cava County. So I included Cava in the title of my budget projection sheet that's completed. You have the option to click review. This can be helpful if you want to make sure you're looking, everything's complete, and maybe you have other interested parties or collaborators that want to have eyes on this as well. If you click that review button, there you'll be brought to this screen, and there on the right, you'll see a green button where you can submit your application. Right below that is a download button. The download button will give you a copy PDF of your entire application. Again, very helpful should you have other folks who need to have eyes on it before you click that green button to submit. On the left there, you can also just return to your application, go back and use those three dots to edit, reopen, etc. Start anew if you need to. I hope you don't, but that's also an option. If you do go back to the application, you'll see you've got 4 check marks here. Your status bar is completely blue, 4 of 4 tasks complete. You've had your folks who need eyes on it do their review. Everyone says it's ready to go. It's before July 1st at 1:00 p.m. You'll click that submit button. You'll have a little pop-up window asking you to confirm the submission of your application. If you're not ready yet, cancel and review are there as well. But if you are, click that submit button. You'll get this notification that your application has been submitted. You'll also receive a confirmation email upon submission of your application. And note that it will come from a no reply email by the SurveyMonkey Apply grant management portal. So check your junk folders if you don't see it soon. But this is what that confirmation email text will look like. And gosh, thank you so much for listening to me gab for 50-ish minutes. Before we open it for questions, I just wanted to include my contact information as well as Avery Sorensen, the CJC grant liaison for this BHD grant program, her contact information. Avery is going to be your primary contact for all things application related in terms of SM Apply troubleshooting, or how do I, add a collaborator? I click submit. Turns out I shouldn't have, I need to reopen it. Can you do that for me? Avery is your contact there. If there are content questions or idea questions, that's where I come in as like the coordinator of this grant overall. But yes, I will go ahead and stop sharing here. Are there any questions that you all have for me today? And I guess lastly, also, we are developing a FAQ, and we'll post that on the website. Should there be some frequently asked questions? We want to get answers to those made public to you all for you as a reference. Thad, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, Casey, great presentation. Question about the coordinator. Many of the counties have an identified one. Oftentimes, job description has to be produced, advertised, may or may not be done before July 1st. Do we list an interim coordinator or how do we address?
Yes, thanks, Thad. It's a great question. Please list the interim coordinator. That would be helpful. We need some person, a representative, that is designated in the meantime. And then, when that person changes, when you do have someone on board, shoot me or Avery an email and we can just update that in our records.
And Casey, we have a couple questions in the chat that I might read out just so we have those in the recording.
Yeah, sure. Sherry, we'll get to you after we get to a couple of chat questions. Thanks for your patience. Go for it, Avery.
What will the process be for amending the projected budget when planning completes, assuming there are changes?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that question. So amending the budget, once it's been approved, by the GRC, let's say come July, those decision makers meet, they review these applications, you're one of the approved ones. Then it becomes a simple amendment, process through the CJC as part of your normal quarterly reporting. Should there be a significant change, let's think optimistically here. Your county somehow becomes, in excess of millions of extra dollars, and maybe you don't need as much VHD funding as you anticipated. Let us know via email, and then know that any unused funds at the end of your project period will just be returned to the CJC. So there's nothing you need to do in the meantime. Avery, is there another one in the chat?
There's one more question. Can grant dollars be used for training specific to deflection?
Absolutely, yeah. And in the budget projection sheet, there is, a specific category called training and associated travel. We'll ask that you identify the name of the training there, a brief explanation of what it is, who was provided by, how many folks are attending, total cost, etc. But that's a great use of fund, especially if you're in the planning stages to get folks trained up. Thank you for reading those out, Avery. Let me know if there's any more that pop up. Sherry, thanks for your patience.
Oh, thanks. Actually, the first question was mine, so I just have a follow-up. Exactly. Because you've used the word projected, which is different from other, budgets for CJC, and we're in the planning stages. I mean, we're going to make it a best shot projected budget. And sometimes it can be pretty complicated because we have so many partners and we're trying to line up the partners and what they need and what's a priority and stuff. So, but it sounds like the budget amendment process is going to be the same as it is for other CJC budgets.
That's
so the
correct.
Word projection is, it doesn't mean that there's anything different about it.
That's correct. Yeah, the reason that we had to add the word projected this time around is just to acknowledge that so many folks are in that planning stage and that it's a best guess at this point. Right. Up to the total amount you were approved, what are you planning on using it for?
Okay. We will probably be putting in an amendment, but maybe not.
Sounds good.
Probably won't be returning the money like your first one, but we'll see. Okay, thank you.
No problem, Sherry.
So we do have another question in the chat. Can grant dollars be used for food at training sessions for attendees?
That's a great question. Historically, food has been something on the unallowable list, just to match some federal grant practices. So that's where I'm going to lean right now is, unfortunately, I think that would be a no. Should that change, or if we receive a different interpretation, I can have our, policy analyst review all the behind the scenes stuff. We can get back to you should that be an allowable expense. And we'll, again, we will include that on the FAQ. I think that will probably be a commonly asked question.
We do have another question specific to allowable uses. Can grant dollars be used for establishing a restitution program for individuals whose initial contact may include property crimes?
That's a great question. So folks eligible for your deflection program may have been involved in property crimes, and can restitution be an eligible expense? I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one, so we can include that in our FAQ. I'm sorry that I don't have that answer on the top of my head right now. I'm not seeing any other hands. I know that you all could be furiously typing right now, and we could get a slurry of chats soon. So Avery, I appreciate you continuing to monitor that. Casey, how can I help you?
And forgive me if you already answered this, I came in a little bit late. Is this webinar video and the slide deck going to be available today? Because this is really, really great. We met yesterday and went over the application with our group. So, and Casey, I sent you an email already on this, so forgive that. And also the resources at the conference, is that all located in kind of like one document center?
Oh, great question, Casey. So for the first part, yes, this is being recorded, and we will absolutely make it public to the CJC YouTube channel. We're happy to distribute the specific link to that video, as well as a copy of the slide deck to all the coordinator folks that we have included as part of our BHD contact so far. And then we will also, I think it probably would be helpful to post it to our BHD webpage. I think that the link and slide deck will be available before actually posting it to that webpage. So that may take a day, just because it's a back end person that helps us out. But we will distribute it and let folks know as soon as it's available. I hope today, and if not today, by the end of this week for sure. No problem.
Okay, super.
For your second question about this presentation, the symposium, was that the one that you would talk to?
Yeah, because there was a lot of good information there, and
I'm glad to hear it. We're happy to post that to the BHD webpage as well. I can throw up as many presentation slide decks as I've done before. I don't have a copy of that recording, however. I think that the organizers of the symposium, I know that they recorded it, there were cameras there, but I'm not sure where that recording lives.
Okay, yeah, maybe just maybe let the others know that, some of those slide decks at least were really informative. Would love to be able to review them again.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Casey. And if anyone else has feedback, if there was something that you were hoping for today and didn't see, or want in a future presentation down the line, let me know too. I'm open to that feedback.
Thank you.
And I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat.
Great. Well, I realize we're a minute past 11. Thank you all for tuning in today. I really hope that this was helpful and answered some of your questions. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, and we will distribute the recording link and the slide deck, to folks by the end of the week for sure. Take care.